After a quiet rounding of Cape Voltaire during the neap tides, we head across Admiralty Gulf and towards the Osborne Islands. We arrive late in the day with a sea breeze from astern and anchor off a broad sandy beach on southwest Osborne Island. In the morning we head for the anchorage known as the Rock. The Osbornes are home to extensive pearl leases that take up vast parts of some of the bays and make navigation a bit tricky at times. The Rock's anchorage is centrally located amongst the Osborne Islands, giving moderate protection from sea breezes and trade winds. It is well named, with many outlying rocky outcrops scattered in the surrounding waters. The nearby beach to the south has several interesting rock arch formations. We head east in the dinghy into an inlet containing some interesting art and geological sites. The site known as the Apartments is a must-see, with an extensive labyrinth of caves and passages under a huge rocky outcrop.
So this is what they call the Apartments in the Osborne Island area. Absolutely spectacular cave system under this massive rock. Very, very worthwhile coming to have a look at. It used to be occupied by the Aboriginals at one stage as well. But just the rock formation is just absolutely amazing. The camera doesn't really do it justice. And there's a few bats in here.
Look at the little window.
Providing such great shelter, it's not surprising the local Indigenous people also left art on some of the rocky overhangs. A little further along the inlet is the site known as the Birds.
Another interesting art site in the Osborne Island area. Can't decide whether they're fish or birds or someone suggested penguins, but I think that's probably unlikely. So this is the rock bar leading to the Buzzard Falls. We've left the dinghy just around the corner. A little bit nervous because there's warnings of a croc that attacks dinghies around here too, so after our last one, and we have them pump our dinghy up every day, we certainly don't want that to happen again because we've run out of glue and patches, but beautiful spot nonetheless. There's only the barest trickle of fresh water flowing now this late in the dry. This is the billabong at Buzzard Falls in the Osborne Islands. At the moment the river's not flowing anymore this late in the dry. We're just going to have a bit of a quick dip in this very shallow but definitely croc free rock pool. And this is when the dinghy wheels come in handy. We can pull it up out of the water so that reputed croc in the area that chews on dinghies can't get to us so easily. And this is the rock art at Snake Valley. Not a lot here, but there's a really interesting long serpent there. I don't know if you can see it. And on the wall there looks to be what I'd say is probably a turtle.
On the way back to Naringa, we try a little fishing around the rock.
Well, at least we're catching fish.
This is a pretty good example of a finger mark snapper or a golden snapper caught on a soft plastic by yours truly, Helly Bell. Not as easy as the queenfish, but hopefully really good eating. Can be scales absolutely everywhere.
One nice piece of fish.
After washing down the cockpit, we are visited by a friendly tawny nurse shark looking for a feed.
He smells it.
He just sucked it up.
The evening brings the full moon and a reminder that the tides for the next few days will be at their strongest. We head for Parry Harbour and Cape Bouganville, a little apprehensive about the rough seas indicated around the headlands both towards the harbour and the cape.
So here we are in Parry Harbour. It's a beautiful calm anchorage at the moment, just below the tip of Cape Bouganville. We had a bit of a nervous day yesterday, coming up from the Osborne Islands. The tides are at spring tides at the minute, and there's a lot of overfalls and rough water indicated around Parry Harbour and lots of warnings for navigation. But it ended up being okay, no problem getting in here if you just followed the cruising guides.
Today we're going to head off at about 10 o'clock to get to the exit of Parry Harbour around 12 o'clock, which is slack water, and then hopefully take a bit of a ride with the tide across the top of Cape Bouganville before it strengthens too much and gets too rough. At the moment the winds are really good for that. They're very light, so it won't throw up heavy seas across the top there. And then we'll head into Freshwater Bay, although we're going to have to push against tide to get into Freshwater Bay for the last 5 miles or so, so hopefully the tides won't be too strong, us having only a maximum speed of 6 knots. So with a bit of luck we'll be in Freshwater Bay this evening. And this is Parry Harbour in the southwest arm. If you're going by Dennis Ford's anchorage guide, we're in anchorage number 1. Which is meant to be sheltered in most winds, and it's about 6 miles to Hat Point, which is the exit point from Parry Harbour to around Cape Bouganville. At the start of each leg we put on our safety gear, including a safety harness and a life jacket with a personal locating beacon attached. As we approach Hat Point, it becomes clear that the slack water we were hoping for was already ebbing quite strongly. Despite the calm conditions, the seas ahead rounding the Cape looked intimidatingly rough at times. Crossing the discoloured and turbulent waters over Bouganville Reef with a charted depth of only 3 metres, we anxiously scanned the sea ahead for any signs of uncharted danger. The Cape rounded, we head south into Banastart Bay with the wind from astern. The ebb tide stays in our favour to the last headland before turning into Freshwater Bay. We find the anchorage and take the dinghy to the Freshwater Rock Bar. Freshwater Bay lends itself to getting your laundry done. I'm sure we weren't the first and we won't be the last to use it for that. But other than that, it's a beautiful place too. The main swimming hole is found some way upstream with interesting plants to see along the way. So this is the swimming hole at Freshwater Bay, at a 180-200 metre walk up the gully. Beautiful croc-free swimming hole, only about neck deep in the very middle there, and flows all year round, and is an absolute welcome relief to the heat and the dry and not being able to wash off every so often.
our cosy V-berth. In the Kimberley, even the silk sheet covers were too warm on some nights. Our sat phone was one source of accurate weather information, along with a way of calling for help in an emergency. We head south once more towards Jar Island and some more Aboriginal art sites. The pearl leases come in very close to the corner of Jar Island, so we decide to use the head sail only while we negotiate the narrow pass along the northwest corner of the island. After anchoring, we go ashore and immediately attract the attention of a large and aggressive looking croc.
Tony, you got a small finger down the front.
Not keen on you, mate. Bugger off. He is. And whilst he's not huge, he's not small.
With no signs of the croc moving on, a few well-placed thrown rocks sends him on his way back into deeper water. Left a little unnerved, we head inland across rocks and a mangrove swamp in search of the art site. After reaching a rocky escarpment, we find some great examples of the intricate Bradshaw type paintings. Whilst crossing the swamp on the way back to the beach, we keep a careful eye out for any signs of croc activity. Pete and Tony on Heatwave invite us over for a pleasant sundowners watching the day fade away. In the morning we wave goodbye to Heatwave and shortly after up anchor and follow some dolphins around to the northern end of the island.
Rocks and overhangs everywhere. There could be all sorts of things, but you could spend weeks and months having a look.
You've got to keep a really sharp lookout on the tops of these caves. There are little bits and pieces all over the place. These are some quite well preserved figures, not quite the Bradshaw style, but intricate nonetheless.
Oh, I don't know what these hanging off about the hips are. It doesn't seem to have any hands, but that might be obliterated. Or feet, which many of them do.
Yeah, and those things down the bottom, they could be dilly bags on really long things going up to the shoulders almost, by the looks of it.
Or
not sure.
Held round the waist. Or
all around the waist, yeah. All very fascinating, isn't it?
It is.
Looks like a likely overhang, but no art here. The rocks are always interesting, the way they're suspended and arranged in weird and wonderful ways that look totally unstable, but seem to last for thousands of years that way.
Heading east, we cross Bannister Bay to visit the site of a World War II DC3 plane crash. With a rising tide, we haul the dinghy well up the beach to allow for enough time for us to have a good look around.
The wreck is probably directly across the salt pan on the other side there of this DC3. So this is the DC3 wreck on the salt pan across from Jar Island. Did an emergency landing in World War II onto the salt pan, but didn't have enough room, crashed into the trees. There's one of the rotary engines are remaining, the other one's been taken away, and you can see in the wing quite clearly where trees have hit the wing and crumpled in the wing structure. This wing remained attached, the other wing was ripped off. But having said all that, it's probably one of the most intact plane wrecks that I've ever come across. And by the number of footprints here, it's clearly very frequently visited by cruisers.
By the time we return to Naringa, the sea breeze blows in at 20 to 25 knots, making for a bit of a rough ride around to Butcher's Bay. We stop in Butcher's Bay for a very rolly night before leaving early in the morning to negotiate the treacherous Middle Rock Passage. Heading through Geranium Harbour, we pass a Warram catamaran sailing to the west. With our fuel supplies running a little low, we decide to head for Honeymoon Bay to try secure enough fuel to reach Darwin. Honeymoon Bay is exposed to the northwest sea breezes and proved to be a miserably rolly and uncomfortable anchorage. We talked to Joy, the owner of the campground, and organised for her to collect 6 jerry cans from Columbaroo the next day. After a miserable night at anchor in Honeymoon Bay, we head for Anjo Cove with more shelter from the northwest and the promise of a better night's sleep.
So we've had a bit of an eventful couple of days at the moment. We came over from Jar Island, and we found that the sea breezes are actually a lot stronger than we expected. The grid files actually don't show the sea breezes, and they generally blow in for about 4 hours each afternoon for 20 knots and really chop up the sea. Our dinghy's still leaking, unfortunately. It's got a lot of small holes after that croc attack, so we're managing that by pumping it up twice a day. We headed over to Honeymoon Bay. We're also getting low in fuel. Honeymoon Bay, Napier, Broome Bay, and the owner there, Joy, she's an absolute gem. She looked after us so well, and she went into Columbaroo and bought us 6 jerry cans of fuel, which we've now loaded. Unfortunately, while we're waiting at Honeymoon Bay, the sea breeze came in and it was horrendously choppy and the boat was rolling absolutely miserably. So we've headed over to Anjo Cove for today, or last night, and Anjo Cove was much better for the sea breeze, but of course in the morning the wind goes subtly and blows straight into the bay again, but it's been okay. Today we're off to Talbot Bay. Talbot Bay is on the corner of Cape Londonderry. We're going to try round Cape Londonderry the day after. The tides aren't quite right. We're going to be a bit late getting to the turning point in front of the Cape. But they're neap tides, and the tides in Bonaparte Gulf are only 12-hour tides at the minute, so hopefully it'll all work out okay, but fingers crossed.
As each day passes, drifts of trichodesium algae become a common sight, heralding the coming of the wet season northwestward. With the engine running a little rough at times in the last few days at high revs, changing the canister filter was in order before tackling Cape Londonderry the next day. We head for the Cape with a couple of cruising cats in front to lead the way round.